everybody, and welcome to another episode of Get Ready for Game Night, my YouTube channel where I try to teach you how to play some of my favorite games in a casual, unscripted way, just like you're sitting right here at the table with me. Tonight, I'm going to try to teach you how to play a new, hot game. It's really complicated, it's really deep, but I think I can have some fun with it. Tonight, I'm going to teach you how to play Gaia Project, a Terra Mystica game. So let's get ready for game night! So in Gaia Project, every player is going to take on the role of a different spacefaring race, and you're trying to expand your empire. You are only allowed to expand your empire on very specific planet types. And so before you can colonize new planets, you will have to terraform, or Gaiaform, we'll explain what that means later, the different planet types into your home planet and expand your empire. You're going to score a lot of victory points for doing lots of things like building mines, upgrading your buildings, exploring, forming big, vast federations, all kinds of different things. And there's variable scoring. It's going to change every game, and we'll cover all of that. So let's get into the specifics. After following the instructions on constructing the board in the very start of the rulebook, which I highly recommend for your first couple games, you then have to set up the research track. Step one will be to separate out these individual advanced technology tiles and randomly place one of them on each of these 6 spots right up here. Then you'll locate the 9 basic technology tiles. There are 4 copies of each tile, so you'll separate them into their individual stacks and then randomly place each of the stacks in each of these 9 spaces here. You'll also have to locate this token. It's called the Lost Planet token. It goes at the very top of this research track, which is your navigation research track. These are the Federation tokens. You will randomly select one of them. There are 3 copies of each one. You randomly select one and place it here at the top of your terraforming research track. The rest of the advanced technology tiles can be put away. They're not used in the rest of the game. And then just keep the Federation tokens nearby so everyone can see them. This is the scoring board, and it's how you'll keep track of the end game scoring as well as the round scoring. This has to be set up at the start of the game as well. To do so, grab your 6 end game scoring tiles, shuffle them up a bit, and randomly place 2 of them in these areas here. Also, take your individual round scoring tiles, give them a bit of a shuffle, and place 6 of them here, like this. These tiles are called the round booster tiles, and you'll need a number of them equal to the number of players in the game plus 3. So if it were a 3-player game, you'd collect 1 randomly for each player, plus 3 more, and take the others and set them aside. These are now the round boosters that you'd be playing with for the game. Finally, for the general setup, you'll have to make sure that the Gaia Planet tokens, the action markers, the Federation tokens, and the power tokens are all within easy reach of everyone. Next, every player will have to select a player board, and these are double-sided, so you can choose which side you want to play with and set it up. There are several steps to this. First, you'll have to collect all of what are called your satellite tokens. That's those little cubes of your color. You'll also have to collect your player tokens, which are these little octagons. 1 token that represents your materials. Find the corresponding starting material symbol on your slider board up here. A blue hexagon representing your intelligence. Again, there's a marker for where that starts. And 2 markers for how much money you start with. Most factions are going to start with a combination of 0 and 15, placed on the appropriate spot. Then you'll have to set up your buildings. Now, you have some basic building types. You have mines, which you will set up down here. You have trading stations, which are set up in these spots here. Everyone has a planetary institute that goes here. You'll get 3 research labs that are placed here, 2 academies that go on these locations, and 3 Gaia formers that start off the board, but you'll be able to get them as the game progresses. Some factions, like the Ivets, may need some special tokens to go along with their regular setup. After everyone has set up their player boards and the board has been set up, either in the recommended way in the rule book or the advanced way where you set up your own tiles, everyone has to choose a round booster. Beginning with the last player, the player going last in the first round, they will select one of these round boosters and take it, putting it near their player board. Then going counterclockwise, every other player will select a round booster, with the first player choosing last. After each player has set up their player boards, they will then gather all of their respective player tokens and place them on the technology board. 1 token starts here, because every player starts with 10 points, and this is the victory point tracker for the game. You'll take your remaining 6 player tokens and put them here at level 1 of each of the technology tracks. Next, each player will have to consult this area here, just to the right of their portrait. If you see a symbol that looks like this, that is a quantum intelligence cube, and that indicates that you'll start with one in the game. Also, if you consult this area here, you'll see that there may be some symbols that are the same symbols you see on the technology track. If you see this symbol next to this number, that means this particular race, the Nevlos, will start 1 level higher on this technology. Now, if during setup you are instructed to advance your player marker 1 step on any of the technology tracks, and that new step that you're on has a symbol with this tiny star in the lower left corner, that indicates that you will immediately gain that benefit. In other words, if the red player were to go to here, they would immediately gain 2 materials. We'll explain that in more detail later. The last thing everyone will need to do is grab 2 of their satellite tokens and place 1 on the level 0 of each of the endgame scoring tracks. The goal of Gaia Project is to have the most victory points, which is represented by this symbol here, 6, 12, and 18 victory points. There are several ways to score victory points in Gaia Project. The areas indicated on this part of the scoring board talk about the way you will score points at the end of the game. Each of these randomly selected endgame scoring tiles represents a general goal that you'll have throughout the game, and anytime you get closer to that goal, you'll move your satellite marker up, indicating how close you are. Also, at the end of the game, you will score 1 point for each complete set of 3 of remaining resources. Resources, again, being intelligence, materials, and money. You would add all of them up together, divide by 3, and that's how many victory points you'll score. Also, on the technology track, if you reach level 3, 4, or 5, you will score 4 points at the end of the game for each of those levels that you have reached. And that accounts for every single technology track. So in theory, if you're at the very top, level 5 of a single technology track, you will score 12 points. And if you're at the very top of 2 technology tracks, but not to at least level 3 on any of them, then you'll score 24 points. In addition to endgame scoring, there are several ways to score points throughout the game. Each round of the game will reward you with a certain number of victory points every time you accomplish a predetermined task. Also, some of the round boosters will have victory point bonuses on them, as well as technology tiles can have victory points that you earn. Lastly, every time you form a federation in the game, there will be some allotment of victory points given to you. Before we can get into the specifics of the game, you have to understand this part of your player board here, which is your power cycle. There are 3 power areas, 1, 2, and 3. And when you spend power, you will be able to do some incredibly powerful actions in the game. Now, in order to spend power, you must have power tokens in Area 3. That is the only way you can spend power, is by spending it from Area 3. Any action in the game that has a black arrow over top of a purple token means you must spend a certain amount of power to accomplish it. When you do that, you would move the appropriate number of power from Area 3 back to Area 1. And that is how you spend power. Other things in the game will have a purple arrow over top of the power token symbol, and that means you will get to cycle power. Cycling power is how you're able to get power tokens from Area 1 to 2 and 2 to 3. And here's how cycling works. If there are any power tokens in Area 1, and you're allowed to cycle a certain amount of power, you must cycle power from Area 1 to Area 2. So if this were the situation and I can cycle 3, I would have to go 1, 2, 3. Now, if I'm able to cycle more than that, let's say this is the situation and I can cycle 5 power, I would cycle my first 2, 1, 2, and then if Area 1 is empty, then all cycling will be from Area 2 to Area 3. So that'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I would now have 3 power in Area 3 that I could spend. Another way that you can always cycle power at an additional cost is demonstrated right here with these symbols. You can choose at any time as a free action on your turn to eliminate 1 power token from Area 2 to cycle a power token from Area 2 to Area 3. And this is specific to Area 2. You cannot do that to get tokens from Area 1 to Area 2. There are ways to gain power tokens back. If you ever see the power token symbol with a plus in the middle of it followed by a number, that means you gain a power token. And whenever you gain a power token, it always comes into Area 1. Every round of the game will be broken up into 4 phases. An income phase where you'll collect resources, a Gaia phase where certain planets might change properties if it was set up in the prior round, phase 3, which is where you will choose all of the actions until someone passes, and then phase 4 will occur cleanup after every player has passed. Let's talk about phase 1 of every round, the income phase. Every player will consult their player board, their round boosters, their technology tiles, and pretty much anything belonging to them, including where their player marker is on the technology board, and look for this symbol here, the little outstretched hand. Anything on top of that outstretched hand symbol indicates you will receive that now during income phase. So if we look at the red player's player board here, we'll see that across the bottom he will collect 3 materials, 3 money, he'll collect 2 intelligence here, also from this technology tile 4 more money, from his round booster 1 additional material. He'll also get to cycle 4 power and add 1, 2, 3 power. When you're cycling and adding power, you can choose the order in which you do it. So he may want to cycle first, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then add in his 3 power. If you look over here on the technology board, you'll see he also gains an additional 2 intelligence. The rulebook gives some recommended starting planets to colonize, but if you're feeling adventurous or you're experienced, you can choose what your starting planets are. Starting with the first player, they will select a mine off of their bottom row, always pulling structures from left to right as they come off, and place a mine on any of their starting planets. The second player will then place a mine on any of their planet types, and the third player will choose one of theirs. The final player would then go again, placing a mine on a home planet type, then continuing in counterclockwise order. You would continue placing planet types until you're back to the first player and everyone has 2 mines on the board. When this is done, the left 2 mines from your player board should be removed, and it will look something like this. Once the game has been set up and everyone has collected their first round of income, since there is no Gaia phase in the first round, the first player can start taking actions. Every player should get a player aid depicting what the available actions are. There are 7 basic actions in the game, as well as the 8th action, which is to pass. These are building a mine on a planet of your type, or on a planet that you have terraformed to your type, starting a Gaia project. You can upgrade a building that you already have. You could form a federation. You can spend 4 knowledge to go up 1 spot on a research track. You could activate a special action token on the technology track board. You could activate a special action token on your personal board, or you can pass. In addition to the basic actions, which will end your turn after you've completed them, you can take these free actions, any number of them, as many times as you want, before or after your turn. You could cycle 4 power to gain a quantum intelligence cube, 3 power for materials, 4 power for a knowledge, 1 power for $1. You could trade in a materials for $1, trade in a materials to gain 1 power token. You could also trade in a quantum intelligence cube for either 1 material or to increase your navigation by 2. And finally, you could trade in 1 knowledge for $1. You can do these as many times as you want before or after you take your main action for your turn. Your first option on your turn is you could build a mine. Now, in order to build a mine, the planet that you're building it on, because no planet can ever have more than 1 type of building, the planet that you're building a mine on must meet 3 criteria. Number 1, it must be empty. So in this example, this is empty, but these 2 planets are not, because there is a structure already on it. Also, if this is the case, this is not empty because your own structure is already on it. It also must be accessible. Accessible means it is within your navigational range. Everyone starts at a navigational range of 1, indicated on the navigation technology track. As you climb the navigation technology track, your navigation rating will go up. So, since the red player's navigation rating is 1, he could reach this orange planet, but he could not reach this green one. If the navigation were 3, however, he could get as far away as this yellow planet, 1, 2, 3 spaces away. If it is both empty and accessible, finally it has to be habitable, meaning you can only build structures, and the only structure you can ever build initially is a mine, on a planet that is your home planet type. So, before the red player could put a mine on this orange planet, he would have to spend some materials terraforming that planet into a red planet. On everyone's player board, you will see this graph here that tells you how different every planet type on the board is from your home planet. Whenever you see this brown symbol with the little arrow sort of circumnavigating it, that means 1 terraforming step. So for the red player to terraform either a blue or an orange planet, it would cost him 1 terraforming step. 2 steps for these and 3 steps for these planets here. The green planets and the purple planets work a little differently that we'll cover in a second. So how much does it cost to send 1 planet through 1 terraforming step? To know that, we have to consult the technology chart. If we look at the research or technology chart, you'll see that the left-handmost column, brown, has the terraforming symbol on it. Wherever your player marker is on this chart will determine how many materials you have to pay to terraform something one step. So if you're at level 1, which is where most players will start out, you will have to pay 3 materials to terraform one step. As you climb this technology track, however, you may get to the point where it only costs 2 materials to terraform one step, and so on as you climb up. Remember, when you see the symbol with the little shiny corner, that does not mean it changes the rate of anything. That's a one-time bonus. So in our example we just looked at, the red player has a terraform rating of 3 materials per 1 step of terraforming. Since he wanted to terraform an orange planet, which is 1 terraform unit, he would have to spend 3 materials. He could then take the mine and put it on the map on that orange planet. However, he has to pay for the mine. You'll notice over here there is a cost associated with every planet type. The cost to build a mine is an additional 1 material and 2 money. Now, you may notice, though, that these green planets do not appear anywhere on the terraforming chart. That's because they are called Gaia planets, and they can be terraformed by anyone for basically the same cost. It does not cost you any terraforming points to make a Gaia planet habitable. Instead, it will always cost you 1 quantum intelligence cube. So, if you had 1 quantum intelligence cube to spend, and the red player had a navigation rating of at least 2 on the navigation chart of the technology board, or maybe he had a second quantum intelligence cube that he would spend to boost his navigation this round, he could spend the proper materials to build the mine and make the Gaia planet habitable. So again, to make a Gaia planet habitable, it will always cost you 1 quantum intelligence cube. There is an exception, however, and that has to do with starting a Gaia project, which is the second action you can take in the game. To start a Gaia project, you must locate what is called a transdim planet or transdimensional planet, the purple ones. Again, it has to be empty and it has to be within reach of your navigation. And on any turn of the game, you could start a Gaia project if you have a Gaia former, which not everyone starts with these. You would put a Gaia former out on the transdim planet. That does not make it yours. That just says, in the start of the next round, during the Gaia phase, I will transform this planet into a Gaia planet, with my little Gaia former hovering above it. Now, to do that, it does cost quite a bit. You'll have to consult where you are on the Gaia forming track, and depending on where you are, you will have to eliminate upwards of 6 of your power power tokens from the game. You would just have to remove them out of your power cycle and put them in this green area here. By moving them over there, that indicates that you have sacrificed some power to start a Gaia project. In the next round, during the Gaia phase, any Gaia formers out on the board that are hovering over a transdim planet will get a Gaia planet token under them. Now, as an action, you can build on this planet. However, you do not have to spend the quantum intelligence cube to make it habitable. Because your Gaia former is on it, it is already habitable for your race alone. So all you would have to do is remove your Gaia former, spend the appropriate materials and money for the cost of a mine, and that is how you build a mine on a transdim planet. Now is a good time to talk about the Gaia phase, which happens after everyone collects income every round. During the Gaia phase, anyone that has power tokens in the Gaia Project area will move them to level 1 of your power cycle. There is one species where this is not true, but you can figure that out on your own. Also, after this happens, any and all Gaia formers that are hovering above a transdim planet will get a Gaia Planet token placed underneath them on the game board. Action number 3 is you could take an upgrade action. Whenever you take an upgrade action, that involves removing one of your buildings from the game board and replacing it with a better one. Now, the first building everyone always has to make is a mine, and a mine can be converted to a trading post. If that were to happen, you would take the mine off the board that you're upgrading and place it in the rightmost available spot, and then remove the trading post from the leftmost spot and put it on the board to replace it. As you can see, this will affect the income that you get at the beginning of every round. From a trading post, you have an option of upgrading. You can either upgrade from a trading post to your planetary institute, or you could upgrade from a trading post to a research lab. From the research lab, you could upgrade that to a research academy. Now, there's something special about upgrading to either a lab or an academy, and that is whenever you upgrade to a lab or upgrade a lab to an academy, you will immediately gain 1 basic technology token from the research board. Let's take a look at those. Across the bottom of the research board, you'll see the randomly distributed technology tiles. Whenever you build a lab or an academy, you get to choose any one of these basic technologies and add it to your player area. Now, where these are important. If you choose one of these 6 technologies, when you choose it, you will immediately move your player token up 1 spot in the corresponding technology row. If, however, you choose one of these 3 bottom basic technologies, you get to choose any one of the 6 techs and advance 1 spot. This is a good spot to talk about the research board in detail and what each of the research tracks helps you out with. We already explained terraforming, and this is your navigation track. In other words, if a planet is reachable, depends on where you are on this track. 1 space away, 2 spaces away, 3 spaces away, and 4, and so on. As you climb it, you see you can also get quantum intelligence cubes. This is your artificial intelligence research track, and that just gets you more quantum intelligence cubes. This is your Gaia forming track. You don't actually get a Gaia former until you get to this step, and then as you climb it, you gain more Gaia formers, and the amount of power you have to sacrifice to start a Gaia project goes down. This is your economy track. As you climb it, your income will get better and better. And finally, this is your science track, basically gaining you knowledge as you climb the track. Now, a few other things. You'll note this black line here. Whenever one of your player tokens crosses that black line, you immediately get to cycle 3 power. Also, you'll notice these other technology tiles, the advanced technology tiles, are located here. In order to cross this last threshold, first of all, you must have already formed a federation. And when you cross the threshold, you take your federation token and flip it from its green side to its gray side, indicating you've exhausted that token. You can no longer cross the top threshold unless you get another federation token. When you cross this threshold, you gain this advanced technology. And when you gain an advanced technology, you actually must cover up one of your basic technologies that you have previously acquired. So it does pay to think ahead about which technologies you're willing to sacrifice in order to get the usually better advanced technology. Also, across the top of these research tracks, there are a few special conditions. For instance, when you reach the top of the terraforming research track, you gain the randomly determined Federation token that was set here at the start of the game, along with all of its benefits. When you get to the top of the navigation track, you immediately gain the Lost Planet token. This goes on the board in any empty space that you choose, and you would put one of your satellite tokens on it to indicate this is in fact a mine that you own on a new planet type. You're not allowed to upgrade this mine for anything in the game, but it does add one more planet type that you control and counts as a mine under your control for the purposes of forming federations. At the top of the Gaia forming track, you will immediately score 4 points plus 1 point for every Gaia planet that you control. And when you get to the top of the economy track, in addition to the great income you're already receiving, you'll get 3 materials, 6 money, and get to cycle 6 power. And up here on the science track, you'll immediately gain 9 knowledge. I'm going to skip action 4 for a second to talk about action 5 because it's really simple. You can spend 4 knowledge to push your player token up 1 step on any of the research tracks. Now I'm going to talk about options 6 and 7, which is taking a special action. Whenever you see an octagon shape in the game, whether it's green, purple, or orange, that means that as an action, you can do whatever is depicted on that action space. Many players will have orange ones on their player boards or on their bonus markers, and then there are purple ones and green ones on the research board that anyone can take. In order to take one of those actions, if it's orange, you simply declare that you're going to take it, cover up the action space with an action marker, and take whatever is depicted. In this case, the player would be able to get 1 free terraforming step in the process of terraforming something to build a mine. Now, if you're going to take one of the special actions on the research board, well, those will come at a cost. The green ones will require you to spend an amount of quantum intelligence cubes depicted above them. After you spend that amount, you would cover up that action and gain whatever benefit is pictured underneath. In order to take one of the purple actions, first you would have to spend the appropriate amount of power. Then you could cover up that space and gain whatever bonus is depicted underneath. Now what's important about this is that every round, these do not come back off until the reset phase at the end of the round. So there's a bit of a race to get to the purple and green special action spaces before someone else gets to them, blocking them out for the rest of the round. Now let's talk about step 4, or option 4, forming a federation. To form a federation, first you must make sure that the buildings that you have on the map have a total power value of at least 7. The way that's determined is you can see underneath every building is a certain number of power tokens. That represents how powerful that building is. So your Planetary Institute is 3, trading posts are 2, mines are 1, and so on. If you have at least 7 total power out on the map somewhere, you can form a federation. In order to form a federation, you have to connect all of the appropriate buildings on their planets with satellites. And let's look at the board to see how that works. So looking at the board, we can see that the red player has a Power 3 Academy, a Power 2 trading station, and 2 Power 1 mines. That adds up to 7. So as their action, they could form a federation here. When you form a federation, you have to link all of these planets with your satellites. When you do that, you take your satellite tokens and place them in the empty spaces that will connect the involved buildings and planets using as few satellite tokens as possible. So in other words, this would be okay, but I could not, for example, decide to build my satellites all the way around like this and so on to connect. Nope, you've got to do it as efficiently as possible. But this and this would both be legal moves. When you're forming federations, other players can put satellites in the same space that you have a satellite, at a limit of one of the same color in each space. So I could not form a second federation by doing that somewhere else. Once the federation is formed, you then have to count up how many satellites were required to link all of the involved buildings and remove that many power tokens from your power cycle. You can remove them from any of the 3 phases of the power cycle you wish. After you're done linking all of your planets and forming your federation, you get to choose one of the available federation tokens. You can choose any token you'd like, so long as it's not a token that you have already chosen. So if on a previous turn I had formed a federation and chosen this token, I could not choose this one for my next federation, but I could choose this one. Now, what's important to note is that these all have victory points and a one-time bonus printed on them, and you would gain them immediately. You may note that all but one of the federation tokens have a green side and a gray side. This token, that's just worth 12 points and has no additional bonus, does not have a green side. What that means is you cannot use this federation token to cross that last threshold on the research track to get to the top level. You have to have one of these that have a green side to flip over to cross that last threshold. The final option you have if you are either out of materials or just don't want to take any more actions is you can pass. Now, when you pass, the first thing you do is you choose one of the 3 available round booster tokens that will apply to you for the next round. And when you choose it, you flip it over like this, indicating it is not active yet. I'm taking this, but I've already passed for this round. And then you would replace what you took with whatever round booster you had the previous round. Now, you may note that when you pass, you may get some bonus points. Whenever you see this red sort of arrow-looking symbol, that means when you pass. So in this case, when you pass, if you turned in this power booster, you would get 3 points for each research lab you had on the board. Once you've passed, you cannot take any more actions, and the other players can continue to take actions, as many as they want and can pay for, until everyone has passed. Once everyone has passed, you'll then go to cleanup phase. Several things happen during cleanup phase, one of which is that all of the action markers are removed from the action spots, making them available again. Also, whichever round you just completed, that round's scoring marker would get flipped over, indicating that we're all done scoring points for whatever that action was. And finally, all of the round boosters that were chosen when everyone passed would get flipped over to their active side, and now we're ready to start another round of income, then Gaia phase, and action phase. Now, one key concept that you also have to understand is the idea of passive power generation. And this is basically a way for you to cycle power when your neighbors build or upgrade buildings. Here's how that works. If the white player were to upgrade this mine to a trading colony, well, the red player would be able to cycle some power through their power cycle. Here's why. Anytime a neighbor builds or upgrades something that is within range 2 of any of your buildings, you have the option to cycle power passively. What that means is, whichever building that is yours, so this is a trade post, it has a power value of 2. That means you can cycle 2 power, but it comes at a cost. However much power you cycle, you must sacrifice that many victory points minus 1. So in this instance, the red player would have the option of cycling 2 power, but it would cost him or her 1 victory point. Now, in this situation, where the white player has built something on the yellow planet, and it is within range of 2 different red player buildings, the more powerful building is the one that always gets activated, and it's the only one that gets activated. So now the red player would have the option of cycling 3 power at the cost of 2 victory points. If it were like this, well, now the only building that is within 2 of this getting built is a measly little mine. That means the red player would get to cycle 1 power for free. This would apply to any other opponents that are also within 2. So if this is the situation and the white player builds there, both the red and blue player would get to cycle 1 power for free. This is optional. You don't have to do it, but it is an all or nothing. In other words, you have to cycle all the available power to you, and you have to sacrifice all of the necessary victory points. If you can't do the entirety of that option, you're not allowed to do any of it. A few more things about iconography. Whenever you see this green arrow, that means from now on for the rest of the game, whenever you do something, something else will happen. In this case, when you build a mine, you'll get 3 victory points. Whenever you see the dark sort of purplish arrow, that means it is a one-time effect. So in this case, for every Federation token that you own, you'll score 5 points. This symbol here means for every sector that you have influence in, or you have a building in. You'll get 2 points for each sector that you have a building in, sector being one of the tiles of the main board. One thing to point out, whenever you're upgrading from a research lab to an academy, you can choose which academy you want to build, because unlike the other building types, each one of these gives you a different bonus. In addition to every species having a different starting scenario with different starting resources and different starting positions on the research track, every species also has some bonus associated with building their planetary institute. In the Xenos yellow player's example, now, after the planetary institute is built, you will gain a quantum intelligence cube every round, and it will only require 6 power to form a federation instead of 7. Contrast that with the Nevelos. Once they have a planetary institute, they will gain a power token every round, as well as cycling 4 power. And now every power token in Area 3 can be cycled or spent as though it were 2 power instead of 1. And every one of the 14 factions has vastly different starting abilities and planetary institute powers. There are a few more things that you can pick up in the rule book, like there's a few different rules for a 2-player game, where you have sort of a dummy player that sets some arbitrary values for endgame scoring. And there are also a myriad of other rules for the individual races, and you can look up what every individual token in the game does. I'll leave that to you, but this should be everything you need to know to at least get started playing Gaia Project. If you find any mistakes or goofs I made, just feel free to put them in the comments. If you like what I'm doing, feel free to like and subscribe, tell your friends about it. Anyway, hope you've enjoyed this episode. See you next time on Get Ready for Game Night.